Okay, so the next part of our portfolio that we're looking at is the client profile. Before we move on to that, I just want to show you what's happened over on this side of the page with the corporate identity, which is the last thing that we looked at. I've just inserted a little statement in explaining what that image is, and down at the bottom just done a brief questionnaire summary. So I've highlighted the slogan to feel was best suited for the questionnaire, and then obviously from this one I will highlight those three and put those in the questionnaire, and then when I ask the questionnaire that will give me the answer to the slogan that I will use in my shop corporate identity. Okay, so over on the other side we're now looking at our client profile. Now again, this is quite important on the client profile, simply because what we need to do is we need to identify the market that's going to actually use our shop or actually buy the products. Now as you get into design, certainly if you carry it on into higher education, marketing is a crucial element to all sorts of design, depending on whether it's fashion, depending on whether it's product design, industrial design, architecture, interior design. All of these are basically sold to a sort of a market. So what we need to do in our folder is show that we've considered a target market or a niche market, and we call that really the client profile. Now again, identifying the needs and likes of the target market is really what this sort of section's for, and it doesn't need to be a big section. And you can see that what I've included on mine so far is the gender, the age, the family situation, the job, the income, any other expenditures that they have, for example the house, the car, any hobbies that they have is quite important to try and understand the person who is going to be using our item or our product, so we can create an environment best suited for them or to attract that type of customer. Obviously the home life we need to look at, and where they usually shop, what's the competitors that they would go to, and lifestyle. Now this is important because people only have a set amount of money, and how they spend the money is really where marketing comes into it, to try and persuade them to spend the money into this area. So there's different ways you can go around finding a client profile. One is you can already look at the market, look at the type of people that use that market. To some degree I've done that at the bottom. So all I've explained there is on my designer element. There we go. Basically what I've done is I've sat outside the game shop and I've sort of looked at the type of people that go into the game shop. Now I've generalised by doing that because most of the people that went into the game shop were certainly teenagers, they were certainly in the young 20s. Usually they were male. Very few females actually went in proportionate to males. So that already has given me an idea of who would actually use existing shops. Now the things that I need to include on here is to actually say that I've observed the type of people that have gone into my competitors' shops, and what I will do is in this area here is take some images from the shops to actually prove that I did that. At the time I didn't think I'd be able to do that because of the weather, so it's something I need to go back and look at, but I will insert two photos just to explain that I've actually been outside shops watching the type of people that go in. And this is something that market researchers do. They'll interview, they'll ask questions to the people coming out of the shops. But the main thing is that they observe people in a way that doesn't affect what they're doing or how they're behaving. So the behaviour of the customer is really what we're after, without us influencing it too much. And so we create an image board just to remind us of the type of people that are going to use our sort of product. So all I've done there then is I've come up with the solution or a description of the type of person I'm going to try and give my shop sort of how to word it to attract them in is the easiest way of saying it, but I'm trying to tie into all the things that they would like. So for hobbies I've looked at things like sci-fi, I've looked at things like gaming, new technologies, music and gadgets. Where has that come from? Well, when I was stood outside the shop just watching people go in, most of them had iPhones, most of them had gadgets, some had headphones on, so I'm assuming they like music as I go through. The way they were dressed would certainly suggest sort of thing that they're sort of like using the skaters or the things that are social. environments that are actually popular at the moment. Some had some sort of sci-fi things. The t-shirts are going like Star Wars t-shirts or gaming t-shirts, which is why I've included that on there as well. So that's a sort of, just from observation, the sort of clientele that would use my sort of shop. Now obviously, having worked in an area where I have teenagers and I can ask them their opinions, it makes sense that I've actually tried to do the shop front towards those sort of people, because I can always ask them their opinion, and that's something else that you need to consider. If you are doing things like business studies, or you plan on moving on looking at media, then you'll probably look at something like consumer behaviour. You'll look at how organisations buy things, how we segment markets, and literally anything to do with marketing information and research. They're big areas to cover, and ones that we don't necessarily do in design technology, but they are all linked, because the idea of design technology is that you make money by producing a service or a product, and obviously the idea of making money is that you sell that product on to the consumer. Okay, so what we've tried to do here as well is we've also looked at things like Maslow's law, which is the hierarchy of needs that makes people feel happy. We've looked at socio-economic groups, if you like, the upper middle class, the lower middle class, skilled working class, all those, and we've sort of tried to pitch this person, where do they fit in that class system. Now I've put here as a student but does casual work and has a sort of an average income. Now I can sort of look at the average income from census data and various things like that if I need to go further into it, but on average that's probably about where people will be earning, and where they'll be moving up into the upper working class or social middle class. That's something we have to think of as well. Other things that we need to look at is the individual, the family roles, the social roles, the work roles, etc. So gender, obviously, males will have different sort of interests and hobbies than females. Family, this person still lives at home because of his age, however he's got a girlfriend, that will influence where his money's spent. So any other things that actually take money out of his pocket would actually be considered. So it could be things like the cost of the phone, the cost of gadgets, his travelling expenses if he owns a car, for example. Although he's only got 12,000, when you start taking this out of that sort of salary, that's the sort of thing that we're looking at. We've also need to look at the culture, so what we call societal environment, so the media, marketing, advertising, fashion, technology, that market pool, those sort of things that we looked at, and that can be written into that as well as things like any sort of political or legal or religious sort of background these people may have. So obviously when I've been looking at things in Canuck, they were dominantly white, dominantly male, dominantly of an age between this sort of age group, and so that's what I've focused on. So in some ways we are being stereotypical as designers, but we're focusing on the needs of that market, or the youth market. If you are interested in this sort of area, one of the models that you could use is the Family Lifecycle, and that was created by Wells and Gubar from 1966, which breaks down the different types of families. Or you could actually look at how money spent, the marketing mix and various things like this. Really what we look at there is who's going to use it, who's going to purchase it. So for example, a child hasn't got money of their own, marketing companies will show toys between early hours in the morning when kids are generally watching TV, and they'll aim it at the child, obviously knowing that the purchaser will be mum or dad to buy the toy. We need to think of how we're going to get that sort of message across to young children. So that's what we call an initiator. So in other words, what's going to make the child ask for the new toy. And then we look at things like market influences. The influences, mum thinks it'd be a good birthday present, or dad thinks it'd be a good Christmas present, or it fits into that sort of environment. And then obviously the decider is whether we can actually convince the parents, or the child can convince the parents, that it's value for money and that the child actually needs this. So marketing is quite a deep sort of, shall we say, subject area that, although we're not going to cover at GCSE level, it's certainly covered at A level, but we have to be aware of it, and that's what we're trying to show on this sheet. So your sheet, when it's all done, should look very similar to this one.